Not join live or who are listening to the recorded version of this webinar, we will add additional seminars or webinars and to accommodate those who couldn't join us as well as those from other regions. But we'll definitely want to post this webinar for those of you who want to see it again. To ask a question, please use the GoToWebinar console on the right-hand side of your screen. Simply select the third panel from the bottom of the console and click the plus sign to reveal the questions window. Then click in the questions field. We'll answer as many questions as possible at the end and then post additional answers to the web if required in a few days' time. So without further delay, I'm going to pass things over to Tony, who will get us started.
Good morning. I have to admit this is new to me, my first webinar. I've done these in front of crowds of a couple of hundred people at a time, but this is the first time looking at a box while I do this type of thing. So John's going to tell me to keep my talking pace in line because I tend to be a fast talker. And as he mentioned, we'll probably go through more than 25 tips. I don't plan on keeping a running total, but I thought that the first thing we do is start with Connect, and we'll show a little bit of Draw and Connect working together, and then we'll get into Draw. Like John mentioned, if you have any questions, you can post them in the webinar panel at the bottom, through questions, and we can try and cover them. And John will be moderating. He'll tell me which way he prefers to do it. So with that, we may as well show you or start with the newest application that we've included in the suite called Corel Connect, which helps you connect with your content. In previous versions, we would ship a lot of content with our products. However, there wasn't a very easy way for you to access all of it. So with this, what it does is it comes with CorelDRAW Graphics Suite, and by default, when you install the DVD, it puts the content on your hard disk so that it can search. Now, if you bought the ESD version, or if you decided not to install the content, you are able to configure. If you installed from the DVD but didn't install the content, just simply put the DVD on the drive, and you'll notice that the CGS5 content comes up. And if you went for the ESD, you can get the DVD from customer service, and that will enable you to have the content available to install. All right, so with that, why don't we start? So the first thing you'll notice is that so sorry, we're having a microphone problem here. We're trying to sort that out. So this allows you to search not only the content that we ship, but also with your hard drive. You'll notice that these are content libraries launched at the top, but also you have the ability to search or even to browse the files on your hard drive. Some people had commented earlier that they were no longer included, but both the standalone version Connect and the Docker version of Connect can browse through your hard drive if you want to find content that exists on it. So a simple search is just to select the content CD, and then you can type in some kind of label that you want to look. And you'll notice that it now sorts and shows us content that's available on that DVD. So you can search for whether it's the clip art or the photos or the other types of things that we include, they're all available in here. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that it searches the items that are checked. So it searches the desktop as well as the content CD. So anything that's checked will be included in the search results. The one that's highlighted will have the highest priority. Now, something that we added in the first service pack of CorelDRAW Graphics Suite X5 is the ability to search online partners. And in this case, we have Flickr, Fotolia, and iStock. I just thought I'd quickly go through the activation procedure so you can see what the deal is with these. Some people said they had a hard time trying to figure that out. So if you click on the libraries thing at the top or one of the library partners, it comes up and shows you that the libraries that are available. You'll also notice that it allows us to search in the previous versions. You can do this either by putting the CDs or DVDs in the drive, and then they'll show in here, or you can copy the content to your hard drive and then use locate to point to the folder where the content is, and then you can search either of those two methods. So with this one, we can go through and select Fotolia, and we see that they give us the terms of use for the images that they have. We click Accept, and now we have a green check mark. The green check mark and the checkboxes over here means that now we can search for that type of stuff. So what I'm going to do now is search the desktop and Photolio for images of balloons. And you can see here on my desktop, we have some images that I have on the desktop, as well as search results from Photolio. You also notice that it says that we have 25 of a whole heck of a lot of images, 25 to 29,000 and change. And if you want to see more from Photolio, you can just click down here. And what happens is it'll go out to their website, so we can turn around and have these available. By dragging these into the tray, I'm saying that I want to have these available for use later. And I'll show you why this is important. All right. So there's some bits on Connect, and now we'll launch Draw. So here we're in CorelDRAW, and there's a little piece that I want to talk about here. The Quick Start screen is fairly similar for people who have X3 and newer. So we're just going to go to the new document. And this new document dialog is new to X5, and it's kind of important, so I'm just going to spend a second on it. Some people had asked about why, when they're exporting to bitmaps, it keeps defaulting color mode than what they had hoped for, or it defaults to a different resolution. And in CorelDRAW X5, the documents contain color information that wasn't available in previous versions. So from this, I want to pay attention to these two things at the bottom here. One is primary color mode, and the primary color mode sets up not only what color format it's going to try and export to, or color mode it tries to export to when you do bitmaps, but it also sets up which palette is going to be visible down the side of the screen. And the other thing is this rendering resolution. This sets up the default resolution that will be used when you export to bitmaps. So for example, if you go to the JPEG, you go to export to JPEG and you find it keeps defaulting to CMYK and not RGB, it's because the document default color mode, primary color mode, is set to CMYK. We can edit this later. I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm just going to go and say OK in here. So these Dockers launch by default. I'm not going to use either of those right now, but I'm going to go through and go to the Connect Docker, which also opens up the tray. So you'll notice the tray now has the items that I had dragged into it inside of Connect, and I can grab these and drag them into my workspace. Now, this is saying the image did come from an online partner. There are license restrictions to it. It contains the link to it if you want to go back and see what the image original source was. I'm just going to click OK in here. And some people have asked, what's the difference between doing a search on their web service directly as opposed to doing it inside of Connect? Well, when we bring these items in, we actually remember where they were, where they originated from. So if I bring up the Object Properties Docker, you'll see that there's a link at the bottom. And clicking on this will take you back to the website and show you the original image, and you can see what it takes, number credit-wise or money-wise, purchase-wise, to get this image from their website. So that's kind of handy that it keeps that information. And the other thing that's available in here is when you do right-click, there's also this thing, replace comp. So assuming that you want to use this file and you've downloaded it from their website, you can now use this to navigate to the file, and when you click on it, it will bring it in, it will match the size, match the position, and try and match most of the effects that you can apply to it. So it just substitutes the image in, and so you don't have to redo any of that positioning, sizing, any of the effects that you apply to it. So another new thing in X5 is this document palette. I'm going to take it and drag it up here. This is just where I kind of like it. And the document palette allows us to keep a collection of colors with the document. Very easy to use. You just click and drag content over it, and you'll notice that it shows me a preview of the palette that's going to be added. When you're bringing colors in from a bitmap, it gives us a little window that allows us to select how many. You can do multiple bitmaps, and it'll show all the colors that are going to be added. I'm going to click OK, and then those colors are in. In fact, I think another thing I'm going to do is just go back and grab a piece of clip art from our content CDs, just so I can have a piece of vector artwork to work with as well. All right, so I'm going to grab the vectors in. And now you'll see that as I click and drag the vectors in, it also adds the colors that are available in them. If you're using things like gradient fills or mesh fills, it grabs the colors from each stop on that fill or each node inside of a mesh and adds them to the palette. So it doesn't go and add every little piece of shading between every little object inside of it. It just grabs the ones that are on each stop. And if you take a piece of content out and you want to purge the colors that are no longer in use, from the flyout here you can select palette and then say reset palette. It gives you a warning that says that the colors are likely to be removed from the palette. Say OK. And then what it's going to do now is go through all the objects and rebuild all the colors in the palette. so it clears out the ones that aren't used. Another little feature that we added in X5 is the ability to select colors, add colors to a palette directly from it. So if I click on the eyedropper tool, you'll notice it gives me a little preview. I can select it from anywhere on the screen. I'm not limited inside the drawing window. And if I want to add more than one color, it's telling me I can just hold Control and it'll add colors from anywhere that I click. So I can go through anywhere. I can click off the dockers. I can grab content that's on the page anywhere. So when we're speaking about using color, it was one of the top things that we wanted to work on this year, and we tried to make it a lot easier to use color in all sorts of places. Right now, I'm just going to minimize my tray here. I'm going to go back up to my window, and so, for example, if I use color from within any of the palettes, of course, you know that you can left-click to assign the fill and right-click to assign the outline. But even in items such as the interactive tools, like, for example, inside of Drop Shadow, we always had a little drop-down that allow you to select which color you want to use from a palette, but now you can use this eyedropper to select it from anywhere on the screen as well. So when I click on this, I can go and sample the color from the Drop Shadow from anywhere. One thing you might not be aware of, but in X3 we added the ability for spot colors to be added to these particular things as well. So any of the interactive effects can now contain spot colors, whereas previous versions would take the spot colors and convert them to a process color somewhere. So another thing that was added is a fast access to the eyedropper tool. So if you do Control E, okay, E for elephant, Control Shift E, it brings up the eyedropper and allows you to do the color anywhere inside of the gradient. So this works not only for gradients, but also for mesh fills. So if you're working on a mesh fill, well, that may be something that you're not aware of actually. If you take a gradient and you apply a mesh to it, what it does is it samples the color under each node inside of a mesh and then locks it to the new mesh. It can also do that for bitmaps too. So if this is a bitmap object, we take a mesh and well, actually, you know what, to get more of an effect on that, I'm going to add more nodes to the mesh. Say we'll do a 5x5, and then when I go and I move one of the nodes, it's going to convert that to a mesh fill object, and then it grabs all the colors underneath the nodes and then uses it inside of the mesh. So again, a shortcut to edit the colors inside of the mesh is you can click on Shift E, and then you can go and select color from anywhere inside of the desktop, inside of the drawing window, wherever. Another point that you might not realize inside of the mesh is you probably know that you have these handles that allow you to adjust the way that the color blends, but the length that you pull the handles out from the nodes is what sets how much the color radiates out from that node. Sorry, I'm having mouse troubles here. In fact, I'm going to switch to my trackpad because that mouse is not making me happy right now. So you notice as I pull the nodes out, the color bleeds out from that particular node even further, and the shape of the handles actually says which way the color is going to move from or progress from that node to another. Some people have asked, how come we can't put meshes inside of complex objects, like inside of text? Well, when I say complex, basically I mean something that has more than one path to it. So the deal with meshes, because they go from node to node, they can't be contained inside of an object that has more than one path. So the way to get text into something like inside of it, or the way to get a mesh inside of something like text is to use the power clip feature for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this and I'm going to power clip it inside, place inside container, place it inside the text. Oops. So now the mesh is inside of the text. And another thing that's kind of hidden, to be totally honest with you, is the fact that you can unlock the contents to the container. So if you notice now, I can move the container around. The contents are staying in the same place, but it allows me to move the container around so that I can see the view of the contents. Now, there's people all the time going to taking the long way around. They go to here, they go to effects, they go to power clip, and then they say that they want to edit the contents of the power clip. Okay, so this is the normal way that you see people going in and out of PowerClip, but you don't actually need to go to that kind of level. If you on a PowerClip, it jumps you into the edit state, and same thing with rollovers. If you use rollovers inside of Draw, Control-click jumps in and out inside of these things, so you don't have to get fatigue going up inside of all the menus trying to find these things as you jump around the workspace. So something else I wanted to show you was there's a couple of things. This actually isn't my workspace. Before I started the webinar, I went and reset the workspace to the way that we ship it from the factory so it would look familiar to you. But when once I work with this for a couple of minutes, there's a few things that I like to move around, and I want to show you how to quickly do some customizations so that you can make the workspace your own. The first one that I'm not particularly a fan of is the fact that Open Recent is down here at the bottom next to Exit. So what I want to do is to move it up to the top. So what I'm going to do is hold down my Alt key, okay, ALT, my Alt key, click on File. I'm going to go down to Open Recent, and I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to hold. And you notice now it's actually picking it up. It's moving it around the workspace. And as I move somewhere, it allows me to drop it anywhere that I want it. So I'm actually going to drop it underneath Open. Now Open Recent is right underneath Open. So that comes in very handy because you'll notice the property bars are what we call context sensitive. It means whatever you click on, it knows what it is, and it shows options with regards to that. So if I click on a rectangle with Pick Tool, it shows a rectangle. If I click on the ellipse, it shows the ellipse. I mean, that's been since Draw 7 or something like that. But the one thing that gets me is the fact that once I select a couple of things, for example, if I select the power clip and this and that, what it does is it shows me things that are relative to a multiple selection, but the things that I wanted disappeared. So for example, I always like to have outline width around. I don't care if I have one object selected, two objects selected, I like to have unified outlines. So I'm actually going to take these and I'm going to put them somewhere where it'll be persistent. All right. So I'm going to grab a hold of it. I'm going to hold down my Control and my Alt key. Okay. So Alt, we remember from the last time, allows me to move stuff, but I don't want to move it off of here. I want to create a copy of it. So I'm holding down Control and Alt, and I'm moving up here, and I'm dragging my outline width. And now that stays consistent. All right. So you notice that it's on the standard toolbar, and it doesn't disappear on me. Another one that I like to have is my line styles and my arrowheads. Because if I select two lines, again, the property bar goes to show me the multiple selection thing. I always like to have arrowheads available to me in the line styles. Select a single curve. Again, I'm holding Control and Alt. I'm going to drag up here, and I'm going to add the first arrowhead. I'm going to add the line style. I'm going to add the closing arrowhead. There we go. And now when I select two objects, I always have these things available to me. All right. Ta-da. So you can customize the workspace very, very quickly, and not only in Draw, but in Photopaint as well. Another one that I like to do is I move the tools out of the toolbox so I don't have them inside of flyouts. So I take the zoom tool, I move it out, I take the pan tool, I move it out. And then if I hold the Alt key and click and drag this guy off, you'll notice it shows an X. It means it's going to be deleted. So now I don't have to dig into the zoom flyout to get between the zoom and the pan tool. I can just click between the two of them. All right, you can do the same thing in any of them. If you want the shape versus virtual segment delete versus crop, you can pull all these out, put them in a toolbox. You can put them anywhere really. You can put them on the status bar, a standard toolbar. You can make your own toolbars and put things in them if you want them. If you have a specific set of things you always want to be persistent, you can click and drag those things out as well. Sorry, I'm just taking a second to review notes. I've jumped all over the place, and now I'm wondering about this thing. Okay, we already talked about document file and reset colors. Another one that had come up just recently in the news group is how do I take like a piece of content and convert it into spot colors. So I thought I would cover that quickly. So we'll just grab whatever. I'm going to grab a piece of clip art, drag it into the tray, go back to here. I'll go and get the tray. Oh, excuse me, it was minimized. Thought that I had closed it. Drag that back up, minimize the tray. Okay, so this is a popular thing. People do jobs in two colors all the time, and they don't want to have process colors. They go to here, go to print, go to color tab, separations, go to separations. We'll see this is made up of CMYK. So if we're doing 2 colors or we're doing 3 colors, we're doing screen printing, that's not very useful to us. So close those guys, and then I'm going to go and grab a Docker that's called Color Styles. Now if you don't have X5, if you have a previous version, this is in there as well. I think we've had Color Styles for, oh, I'm going to say draw 10, maybe it's even draw 8. So I'm just going to grab the content and drag it in, and you can see that it allows me to create all these color styles in here. So what it's done is it's added each individual color, all right? But what you can do now is manually edit each of these things. But that's not the way that I want to do it. I want to go and actually create linked colors through here. So you notice now it has colors that are all linked together. And this is what I'm going to edit. So I'm going to select grayscale, and I'm going to click on Edit Color. And I'm going to go to the Palettes tab, and I'm going to select one of the Pantone palettes from here. All right, maybe a darker gray. Click OK. We notice the eyes change. Go to the orange, modify that. Click on Palettes, click on Pantone, click that. This changed, red, do the same. Whoops, excuse me, wrong button. And what this is doing is it's going through and it's running through all those objects, and it's creating, it's recoloring them so that it only shows on 2 plates. Oh, excuse me, 3 plates. Should have remembered the gray. So there you go. That's a fast way to grab a piece of content and recolor it so that it only uses two colors, 3 colors, so on and so forth. All right, so one that was added in X4 was, you all know when you click and drag objects, you can just make them a size. You notice on the property bar it's telling us what the size is and what your origin was. If I hold the right mouse button, it actually allows me to move them slightly before I let go of the left mouse button. Notice that? So if you didn't start in the exact spot that you wanted to be, that's even with Control and Shift, you hold the right mouse button, you can move things around the workspace before you actually commit to where they get dropped. Now there's one tool that doesn't work exactly like that, but I wanted to spend more time on this one tool anyway, so we're going to go into this one in quite a bit of detail. So let's get into the Bezier tool. You hear a lot of people when they retrace, if they're retracing content or they're redoing a particular logo, the way that they use the Bezier tool is click, point, draw around, then they close the shape, select all the nodes, convert them to curves, and then they start pulling on the individual line segments, all right, to reshape an object. But that actually isn't necessary. You don't need to go to that. That type of functionality. I'll show you here. So you know when you click and drag with the Bezier tool, it pulls the handles out. And this allows us to draw what's called a symmetrical node. So the nodes move in and out together. The handles, excuse me, move in and out together. All right. Now, something you may not realize is that you can modify the node type as you're drawing. You do this by pressing S, which allows us to make a smooth node. All right. You'll notice that the handle on the left is locked. If I press S again, it'll go back to symmetrical. So S allows me to go to smooth. So as I press S, and that allows me to change the node type as I'm going. The other thing you can do is you can press C, which allows you to draw a cusp node. All right. Some people call them corner points. That's fine. You can click and drag C for the cusp node. Now the thing that I mentioned about the difference with the right mouse button, okay, you'll notice if I'm holding the right mouse button now and it isn't moving the node, but with the Bezier tool, it's actually the Alt key. It allows you to pick it up and move it around slightly, all right, when you're redrawing. So as I click and drag, if I hold Alt, it allows me to move it. If I press C, it allows me to change the node type to cusp. If I do S, it does symmetrical. So hopefully those come in handy for you later on when you're experimenting with the Bezier tool. And after you play with it for a while, it also it helps you get the tracing down a lot faster inside it. Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to show before I forget. If you click and hover over the last node and redraw, it'll allow you to redo that node, and you can even still pick it up and move it. So if I do this, I commit to it, and I'm like, oops, that's not exactly the right spot. If I click and drag, it allows me to pick it up and move it over. Click on it, it allows you to redraw the node, and then if you hold the Alt key, it allows you to move it at the same time. All right. So another popular thing that was added back in X3 or so is the single So you've probably seen these before. If you select all the objects and then you hit these keys, so T for top, it allows you to align them to top. Whoops, excuse me. If I do B, it aligns them to the bottom of the objects. And some people ask, well, how do I know about these shortcut keys? How can I figure out what key does what? So let's talk about that a little bit. If you go into customization and we go to commands, you can go to this button here. So, okay, I'll do that again because I think I went through that a little fast. So customization, commands, and then this brings up a thing, the file menu as well as the toolbox. You'll notice the toolbox is in here, toolbars is in here. Any of the toolbars that you would customize, for example, if I made a new toolbar, it would show up down here. But you go to the shortcut keys tab. Okay, each one of these items has its name, it has a shortcut key, it has an appearance. So if you want to change an icon for a specific thing or recolor an icon, you can do it in here. But if we click on the shortcut key tab and we go view all, what happens is now this brings up this window that shows us all the shortcut keys that are inside of the app. So it has the description of it, it has the keystroke, and if you're wondering what this this table piece is, I'll explain that. Okay, so from here you can export it, you can print it, you can tape it up and put it on your monitor if you want, you can put it beside it, whatever's fine, but it gives you the ability to see everything that's inside of here. All right, and there's some of these shortcut keys that I want to concentrate on. So we talked about the single cut accelerators. So like, for example, select multiple objects, select T, they align to top, L, they align to left, R, they align to right, B to bottom, and then the other one is P for page. But yeah, one thing to watch out for with P to page is it aligns all the objects to the center of the page. So what you might want to do is group them first, and then that'll keep their arrangement. So we're always going to talk about shortcut keys. We talked about all the shortcut keys. I'm looking at John for a primer here. I'm trying to remember what the last thing I was going to talk about. I'm not shortcut key things. Anyways, I forgot. Oh, I remember what it is now. Okay. So you know that I'm sure that you're aware of the fact that space toggles between the last tool that you selected and the pick tool. Okay. So you notice I was in the rectangle tool. That's been that way forever. However, there is one important one that a lot of people don't know about. Is that control space, if you're typing in text, of course it inserts a space character, right? It doesn't flip back to the pick tool. However, control space will flip back to the pick tool. So you might want to get in the habit of using control space instead of just the space bar to flick back to it because it's more reliable. It basically works all the time. This is where I'm used to the audience participation. People start asking questions. Anyways. So that was the thing about the shortcut. So you can see this. But you'll notice that inside of this thing when it says table, it talks about main versus text editing. Because sometimes things have different commands. For example, if you press B to align to bottom versus Control B, you'll notice in the main workspace, Control B brings up brightness, contrast, intensity, but Control B in text editing makes text bold. So there's actually two shortcut key tables, one for when you're editing inside text, and the other one for when you're just working in the workspace, whether you have pick tool or you have any of the tools selected. And speaking of tools selected, I mean, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but you don't actually have to go to the pick tool to do selection. If you're working with the ellipse tool and you want to do selection, if you click on the outlines of objects, you can select objects. There's no need actually to go back to the pick tool at all. All right. Obviously, if you click and drag in the middle of nowhere, it's going to try and create an object. But if you click on the edges of objects, you can do selection with basically all of the drawing tools inside the window. I see a lot of people going back to the pick tool all the time to do selection. And they're probably doubling the amount of clicks that they're making because they're going back to it as opposed to just staying in the drawing tool that they're in and doing selection with it, even with the Polygon tool. So another thing people talk about is sometimes they don't know, they saw an option on the property bar, but they don't know where it went to. And just to explain the hierarchy, first of all, it's whatever the tool is selected is what rules on the property bar. So for example, if I have the rectangle tool selected, you'll notice it's still showing me the rectangle tool properties, but I have an ellipse selected here. So if I click and drag a rectangle, you'll see it shows me rectangles. This is still showing me rectangle options because I have the tool selected. However, if I have the pick tool, then it goes back to the actual object that I have selected. Okay, and you've probably seen this before already, but in X5 we added the ability to have corners rounded with absolute values. In previous versions they were rounded in a percentage of the width of the object, but this one does it in absolute units. And this little button here, some people were asking what this one is. It says whether or not the corners are supposed to scale with the object, or I'll redo that, or whether the corner should stay the same size. Okay, whether they should hold the same radius. So you notice it's holding the same radius as I resize it, or it scales with the object so the appearance is the same. That's what that little button does. And actually, there was another docker that I wanted to show while we were talking about it. This was added in X5. And this comes from a lot of people who do CAD-like work had asked for something similar to this. So object coordinates. This is a docker that allows us to create things at specific sizes and locations on a page. So first of all, we have the little transformation matrix thing here, or the object origin. So if I click the lower left, I can say that I want the left-hand corner of the page, and that I want it to be a specific size. And then when I click create something. So it works for all sorts of objects. You can have lines, you can have multi-point lines, you can have polygons, you can create 6-sided polygons. So if you want to do something that's a specific size and location on the page, this is a good source for you right here. And another thing you might know, you might not know, is that Polygon Tool, if you can click and drag these nodes and move them around, that's kind of fun. But another popular option for them is for making things like gears. So if you need to make like a 32 tooth gear, you can grab this. But when you can double click one of these axes and mirrors it across all the other pieces of it. So I have Snap to Objects on right now. You'll notice that it's a little jumpy, it's a little hesitant on me. So if I can click and move that up. And the other thing is that you can create curves on these things too. So we'll just go back to the way that it was, like this. Grab these points, make that a curve, grab that out, grab this out. There's all sorts of things that you can do inside of this. Basically, it takes one piece of this guy and then replicates it all the way. So it doesn't matter which one you edit on. You edit any of these, it always goes around to all of them, all the way around the workspace. So we had touched a bit about people wanting to do things and at specific sizes and specific locations. So they're not doing something to be necessarily 100% creative. They have a specific task in mind. And some sign makers had asked for the ability to see drawing scale on the right in the drawing window. So drawing scale is something that was added quite a while ago, but we added the ability to see it in the workspace. Now, if you don't know what drawing scale is, it's a function of the rulers, if I remember right. Display rulers, pardon me. Rulers, edit scale, and then it allows you to set up for specific scales. You can type in your own scale if you want. So if you go and change it, OK, click OK, and then you'll notice that the rulers are redoing themselves. Well, I mean, it looks kind of silly doing 1/16 and I'm in millimeters. So the rulers redo themselves so that it pretends to be a different size. So the dimension tool, the proper units, and the proper sizes. And as you probably know, Draw has a page size, or not, a page size that's limited to 150 by 150 feet. But by using drawing scale, you can do something much larger than that, or you can dimension something that's much larger than that. Now, we had talked about the fact that people wanted to see drawing scale specifically in the workspace. So let's go and show that. So this was something that was added. This was done by one of our dev guys, Hendrik. He did it on his own time, so thanks to Hendrik for doing that. So what I'm going to do is come in here. I don't really remember where it is, to be honest with you. So I'm just going to go in here and click on the binoculars for the search function, and I'm going to click on drawing. That's not it. Drawing scale. Okay, now here's an important thing I'll show you, is that this is showing us where it's located. So I'll scroll through a couple of these things here. You'll see this is line drawings. That's like a bitmap effect. And then Smart Drawing Tool, and then Drawing Scale. And you'll notice it says it's not currently available on. Guess where it is. So this is currently used in the File under View, and the Menu under View, and in the Standard Toolbar. But this one is not used. You can see that. So I'm going to click and drag that as well, and I'm going to click and drag and drop it up here. And now you'll see it's giving me the readout of what the drawing scale is inside of the window. Me the readout, but it also allows me to change what the drawing scale is. It emulates what happens inside that rulers page. So if you do a lot of signs or design or anything like that, if you're doing stuff to scale and you need to be able to show the scale, customizing this control up onto your workspace allows you to get to that much faster. So again, you can actually customize any of these things around. So pretty much everything that's available in the workspace is available under here. So if you know of something that you want to put in a different location that's inside of any of these menus, you can just use the binoculars to find it. Type in what the item name is, and then when you click find, it'll go through and start to find stuff for you. And sometimes they have different names, so you have to watch for it, right? So for example, extrude is available as a docker and as a tool. So if you click on the extrude thing, this one's saying it's in the toolbox interactive tool flyout. So we know that this one's actually the tool, but you might want the docker. So if you keep going through here, it'll find the docker for you, and then you can click and drag it and put it, if you want to put it on the standard toolbar, your own toolbar, you want to put it in the menu, change the place in the menu. If you want to add it right into the Windows Dockers menu, you can click and drag it right in there. So, I don't know, like export, I don't know why you'd want to do this, but what the heck, let's show it. So into the Dockers menu, and I want it right here. Click, drag, let go, there you go. Move that stuff around anywhere you want. Some people say that some of these things are organized in a way where it's associated with the function. So for example, text, if we go to text, character formatting is here, but it's not under Windows Dockers, and that makes them a little bit frustrated sometimes. They expect all the Dockers to be underneath here. Truth be told, if we added all the Dockers underneath there, that list would be much, much longer, and I'd be afraid of people not being able to find stuff. But if you go to text and you want to move these things, you can create copies of these inside of the Windows Dockers menu if that makes your life easier. So a couple of things that I saw come up in the news group, some people said that they have black and white laser printers and they're having a problem getting pure black out of it. So as mentioned earlier, we changed some color management stuff. This is, default setting is the application settings, and the document settings is for each individual document. So for example, if I go to the document one, it lists the color profiles that are tagged to it. I wasn't going to cover those today, but here's that setting that allows us to select which color mode it will use when you go ahead and export the default to JPEG or TIFF or anything like that. And also, if you can see on the screen, I'm trying to look over on John's here to see if you can pick it up on that. But if you look at the color palette far over on the right, does that pick up over there, John? Yeah, okay. So you can see the color palette over here. If I flick between these color models, you'll notice that CMYK is now showing me the CMYK colors, and RGB is showing me RGB colors by default. So that's how we do it on the document. Now, if you want to change it, so it always sets up for RGB. So for example, if you're a person who does sign making, or you do laser engraving, or you always do work for the web, then the default to CMYK isn't really what you're looking for. You're going to want to have it set up to be RGB. So then you come into here, you go color management default settings, and then you'll find that down here we have the default for all new documents that we create, as well as for any document that I open from X4. When you open a previous version document into X5, it embeds a couple of things. It embeds the color profiles, it embeds the rendering intent, and the primary color mode. So if you're a laser engraver, a large format printer, a person doing mostly work for the web, or if you're using this product to take into, say for example, AutoCAD or Office or anything like that, I would suggest that you select RGB from this drop-down instead of CMYK. And then the File New dialog will default to that. When you open new versions, it will default to that. And I think you'll get more appropriate choices for color all the way through the application. Okay, so now I need to rewind and talk about the laser printers not printing pure black. So what happens is when you draw inside the drawing space, if you started with CMYK and you print to a printer that isn't CMYK, so in other words, it's not PostScript basically, what happens is we have to convert all the CMYK colors to RGB colors to send out for that printer. Now when we do that, we use these color profiles that are listed up here, and for the most part that works really well, except for people have commented a few times that they don't get 100% black out of their laser printer. And what I would suggest for them to do is come into this checkbox right here, this Preserve Pure Black. You'll notice that the description text at the bottom, if you hover over any of these controls, you'll get some description text. But this Preserve Pure Black means if you have RGB 000, you can see in the description there, it almost sounds like I'm reading it. The RGB 000 will convert directly to either CMYK 0 or the other way. CMYK 000 will convert pardon me, CMYK 00100, K being 100, will convert directly to RGB 000. So then the blacks will be preserved all the way through. Another one that people had asked about is when they use the spot colors, when they use spot colors in previous versions, the colors look more dull versus now they look more saturated. Here, if you see spot color definition, what happens is when we get the color palettes from the various vendors like Pantone or HKS or those Toyo, DIC, we have all these color palettes from people, and they put into the palette that this is a spot color, it's whatever, 100 yellow, and that 100 yellow should look like this. And they give it to us sometimes with CMYK values, sometimes with RGB values, sometimes with lab values. In the case of Pantone, they give it to us with about 7 different color models embedded. So what we want to do is to pick what we think will be the most visibly accurate match from the Pantone palette to what you're going to see on screen. And for this, we use the lab values by default in X5. In previous versions, it was CMYK. So if you find that the Pantone palettes look overly saturated in X5, I would suggest taking this and changing it to CMYK. And then they'll look more like they did in previous versions. And another thing is that people say that sometimes the color management doesn't look exactly the same, and that's true. It's because we have different default color profiles. So if you want to, you can come into here and select the profiles from the previous versions if you want. So now I don't have X4 on here, so I have to apologize for that. I should have set that up a little better. But you can come into here and select the X4 profiles, which was called generic RGB, generic CMYK, and then you'll have the same color profiles between X5 and X4, so it should be the same thing. The other thing is that if you have Adobe apps and you work between CGS and Adobe apps, I believe that they use the Adobe 1998 RGB profile by default. So you might want to select that inside this dialog box too if you want CGS and Adobe apps to have the same color preview on screen. And that's about all I had to say for the color management dialog. So and I don't think that I had anything else off the top of the head. What did you have any questions there, John? Have people been sending in questions?
Yeah, we do have a few questions, Tony. So make sure everyone can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you coming through.
Okay. So we do have a few questions, and we'll try to get to them all in the 50 minutes we have remaining. If not, we'll get back to those who ask questions. The first one is someone actually just wanted you to quickly go through the table tool, just basically how it works. Some people may know this, some won't. So.
Sure, yeah, that's no problem at all. And now, first of all, in Draw's way, the table tool is not for creating tables for HTML output. That was the first point of confusion that people had when we brought it in X4. It's in order to create an organized visual tabular looking data. Okay? So it's not for creating HTML. So that's the first thing we want to quantify with here. So what this allows you to do is it creates basically a grid on the page that allows you to go in and type in it. Okay. Now, when I hit Tab key, it comes up with an option. What do you want to do? Do you want to actually insert a tab and want to move to the next cell, so on and so forth? And so as we go through here, we can go and add information into it. Okay, so we'll go and we'll do. Here we go. So as you go through here, you can go and add text so that it keeps its relative position on the page, and then as you click and scale, it'll keep it together as you move through. You can also insert graphics inside of it too. And so if we had a piece of content, for example, balloon, drag it down here, click and drag. If you right click and drag, you can place it inside the cell. You can copy and paste it inside the cell. You can do all sorts of stuff inside of here. So the other thing with it is it allows us to have background colors inside of the cells. So here we have the background color. We can set it to whatever. And the table itself can have a background color. This might be a bit of a confusing point, because when you go to edit this, you might not see anything. All right. Now what this has done is it's colored the cells that I have not applied a color to. And the other time that'll show is if we separate the borders on the cells. So I click this options drop down, and you can see that this is doing separated borders, similar to the way that you have HTML borders. All right. Now people have asked, how do I edit all the fonts inside of all the cells? Because when I click and drag on this, you'll notice that it doesn't give me the text properties anymore. And the way that you do that is via the text dockers. So if I can go and increase the point size. And these are essentially paragraph text frames that exist inside of it. So all the spacing attributes still apply to these ones as well. Paragraph formatting, you can go to spacing, select these guys, change before and after paragraph spacing, and you notice that the spacing between the paragraphs is getting loose, more loose here. All right. So this is basically a paragraph frame. This might be another one that you didn't know, but inside of paragraph frames, you can align the text to the center, the top, the bottom, inside of this thing. So essentially, these are little paragraph frames that exist inside of all of these cells. All right. Hopefully that clarified what the table tool is and what it's used for. Oh, I'll show one other thing while we're at it too.
Similar to the table thing, to the
table tool. You can place text inside of pretty much any curve object.
The way you do that is
you probably know that you can drag the text tool and you go around the border. This is going to change.
So you can
So
see
you
that
can see that if I'm on the outside, the A with the squiggly, and that means that it's the text to pass.
And
if I
do that again, but I get
the box around. Just the box.
Now I can go
this text and here.
Now, one thing that's kind of nice about it is
it's very easy to use native objects or editing functions on that container. So if I go and I convert this curve,
I can go
and edit this container if I needed to, if I want a specific shape that reflows around. A lot of times you use text drop, but you can also text size and then edit the container size goes around objects if you want it to be very, very specific and not follow the shape of an object while it's text dropping.
Okay, the next question is just around embedding fonts. If you can just give a quick demo on how you embed fonts.
Yep. So have text in the project, as most projects do, like just it doesn't have. You go File, Save. There's a checkbox at the bottom here that allows you to embed fonts.
Now, a couple of notes. First of all, this
doesn't work for double byte fonts. If you have Japanese, Chinese, doesn't work for Middle East fonts, Hebrew, Arabic, but
for all the Western languages, if you click on this button, what happens is it comes up with a little thing that says that you have to watch it because there's licensing that goes with fonts.
Sorry, repeat the last part into the mic.
So John just mentioned that didn't do that clear. So if we click on this checkbox at the bottom of the save, it comes up with a dialog that says, warning, you're not allowed to go and share fonts
all over the place.
So we'll
like that. And then when you see this file, we'll embed something in that project. So if I get somebody else to open it, they don't get panels with dialog. As you know, the file and once you're missing the system, it allows you to select them. So it's a font, I want to select it and say, well, I wanted to actually use this font instead. It tries to make some matches depending on Panos numbers if they're available in the true type typefaces. Type 1 fonts don't have Panos numbers, and some true type typefaces don't have Panos numbers. So people ask sometimes how come fonts don't give a suggestion. They always default to Arial, but that's why. And so when you share this file, whether it be with a client, with another designer, with the print service provider, they can open the file and whether they're printing it or editing it or whatever, and they won't be prompted for missing fonts.
Okay, there's another question here about it from a user who, basically I'll just repeat it. Every time they export a file as an EPS, they always have to select convert spot colors to CMYK. Is there a way to make it default so that it's always selected?
That's a really good question, and I'm sorry I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, we'll get back to you. We'll do some research on that, and we'll get back to the person who asked that question. So
that is interesting with that though is the fact that every time they go to export, it's prompting them. They have to click on the convert spot colors to CMYK, and I'm wondering if that's because the designs have spot colors in it, or if there's something else funky going on. Now, one thing that comes up once in a while is sometimes workspaces get a little crazy, or the application defaults need to reset. And what you'll need to do is to reset workspace. Over here, just a second. I'll actually do it while we're live. And this works for all the files, all the applications that we include with the suite. So here we go. I'm going to do it on the fly. So before I click on the CorelDRAW icon, I'm going to hold down my F8 function 8 key, and then I'm going to launch draw. and then this is go, and it's going to prompt me. Do you want to operate the current workspace factory default? Do I want to get rid of all the changes that I made? And I'm going to say yes, go ahead. And now when it launches, you'll notice that the hint stalker is up again, the object manager is up again. You'll notice that the arrowheads, the enhanced line styles has gone off the standard toolbar. All right. If you find that funky things start happening sometimes, I would first suggest that you back up your workspace by going Tools, Customization, and then you can go to, Workspace. So you click on the Options dialog, go to Workspace, and then say Export. Okay. Click everything that you want to back up. You probably want to back everything up. And then Save. And what happens now is it creates a file on my computer that if I ever need to refer to again, I can use that F8 function, reset the workspace, and I come back to here, I import that workspace, and then it'll give me back all my shortcut keys and stuff like that. Any customizations that I made to toolbars and things like that. So if it's always prompting that there is spot colors in the document, but you don't see any in the design, I would check that. And another way that you can actually verify that if you want to is if you go to Document Properties. I'll need to bring up a color palette here quickly. Let's just go and get a Pantone palette. I'll check this on the screen. And then if you go to File, Document Properties, some people ask about RGB inside of designs too. How do I know if there's RGB objects inside of it, or how do I know if there's CMYK objects inside of it? So this is the same thing. So File, Document Properties, and when you pull down, when you come down here, it actually lists which colors are used inside it. So you see I have CMYK used inside of it, and I have Pantone used inside of it. If I had RGB objects, they would have been listed in here. So it says how many RGB objects, how many Pantone objects, and so on and so forth. So if your design says in here that it has spot colors in it, then they're in use somewhere inside the design.
Okay, we have time for a few more questions. So the next one is around on a circle. How do you reverse the text on the bottom portion so that it appears right side up? So just manipulating on a path. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people call it a circle text. So if we have circle text, we can take this, and this is just regular snapping here. No big deal. Most people do it by they create. Then they go at the end, they have the object text, fit text to path, and then they come to here. And then you'll notice that it is flipped. It's right side up here, but when you come to the bottom, it's like that. But you'll notice here on the property bar, we have a control for mirror text. And if you click both of them, then the text sits right side up. So this was a change made, I believe, in X3. In previous versions, we had a different fit text to path toolbar. You'll notice if I click here, if I control click on the ellipse, I get the ellipse property bar. If I control click on the text, I get, well, actually it gives me the fit text path toolbar. I was thinking it was going to give me the text toolbar for a second there. But anyways, and then these controls allow us to select like the distance off the path, how far down it is, how far does it push from one side or the other. But the nice thing that we added in X3 is that you can click this, just grab a hold of this little red, we call them glyphs, this little red glyph, and when you click and drag, it gives you it shows you how far off the path it actually is. So again, if we want to put it back up on top, you just click both buttons and then it's right up again.
Okay, another question here about the contour tool. So the question is, can you set your colors before so that you don't have to break the image apart and change each selection separately? Not sure if, based on the way that's worded, if you get that, or we have to...
I don't know. Well, let's go through the contour tool and we'll see what happens. One it sounds like it's about defaults. And it looks like you can't set defaults for the contour tool right now. I don't know why that doesn't sound right to me. But with any tool in Draw, before you actually click and drag and make something, if you first go and change items on the property bar, it changes the default for the tool. Now I did too small of a unit here, so we'll do something else. First of all, I have to click off, and then when I go to the tool and I make a change, you'll notice that it remembered the last one. When I click and drag, now every one that I make defaults to that. Okay. Now, what I would have expected to happen in this case, to be totally honest with you, is that when I have nothing selected with the contour tool, I would have thought that, whoops, the ellipse is selected. I would have thought that it would have let me set my defaults, but here you can see it clearly does not. But anyway, so if we click and drag out, it creates the contour on the way out. So let's say it's 2 steps. The distance is 6 mil. And then we can go and select what the colors are here. Now, one thing here is that the original object needs to have a fill. There we go. And now all these other ones will show. Now, I'm not really following where the question goes from there. I mean, you can come back to here and you can change what the fill color is that it's blending to. You can change what this original color was. Inside of the contour, it'll regenerate that. Now, if I want to go and color this intermediate object, then yes, you have to break that apart to be able to get to that. All right. So maybe that's what the question was about. But yeah. But anyways, these are all live effects, right? So as I click and it remembers what the offset was, it remembers how many steps there were, and as I click and resize this thing, it redraws it with the same parameters that it had before. So it does what we call rebuilding. It rebuilds it all the time. So you can't go to the middle object and click and change it that way, because as soon as you change it, you resize it, you move it, whatever, it rebuilds. Wow, that's actually a lot of questions, John. I don't think we're going to get a chance to answer all those.
Okay, thanks, Tony. So it looks like we're out of time, and there's a few more questions that we'll try and get back to the folks individually on. And what I want to do now is pretty much just wrap up. So if you're not using our latest version, X5, I just wanted to let people know that they can actually try a free trial or get more information on the trial at Corel.com/CorelDRAW. I also think you should check out our community site at CorelDRAW.com, and this is where you can get great insight from fellow CorelDRAW users. Some of us from Corel are on there as well. We have a YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/CorelDRAW channel, and this is actually where we post all of the videos that are included in the application. So this will be a great learning resource for folks, and we occasionally add additional videos as well. So youtube.com/CorelDRAW channel, which is a great learning resource. And finally, just wanted to mention on our website on Corel.com, you can get a lot more information. On if you navigate to the CorelDRAW Graphics Suite website or web pages, there's a lot of learning resources on there. There's third-party resources under books, design community, and that's just a great spot to get more information about how to use the product. Some of these things you can purchase, some of them are free, so there's tips and tutorials. There's a lot of information out there. So with that, we're going to wrap up. Thanks very much for attending, folks. I hope, sorry, there were certainly some audio issues there, and we apologize for that, but we will post the recording and hopefully be able to have another listen to it as well, and we'll follow up with those who asked questions that we didn't have time to get to. So thanks again, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.